I'd love to say a little prayer and we'll get started. And you're going to have to, this will be a bit interactive, so you can help me with it today. Welcome to Pastor Ben's Marriage Workshop. Let's have a prayer together. Dear God in heaven, thank you for giving us marriage. It's a beautiful gift, but it takes hard work and we need your blessing. So we just ask for that today for all of us. We also think of others that we care for, and we pray that you bless their marriages too, and help us to grow today. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, we've got three sort of parts to our first session, and then the second session is going to be in 3 weeks' time, the last weekend of June. So look out for that, and it's going to be a good time together. So we're going to go through the 5 love languages really quickly. Has everybody already heard of that? Give us a wave if you're familiar with the love languages. Great. So we'll do that fairly quickly. Then we'll move on to his needs, her needs. Has anybody come across this book before? His needs, her needs? Yep. So just one. And what about John Gottman's work? Anybody heard of Gottman before? Gottman's the new kid on the block that everybody's giving the credit to these days. And so I've got a little pile of books up here, and I don't know, I've probably read 50 books on marriage and relationships, and these ones I think are the ones that I keep coming back to. So there's these two here. I'm going to do a little book presentation now. These are called Power of a Praying Husband and Power of a Praying Wife. And they're books that will not only help you pray for your spouse, but they will teach you how to pray in general about all kinds of stuff. So if you have a look, what it is in the Power of a Praying Husband, the way the book works is that each chapter is a different sort of topic to pray for your spouse. And I remember Jess giving this to a woman, and her marriage was really struggling, and she said this is what turned it all around for her, praying for her husband. And so this is the one for praying for a guy to go through. Each chapter's got like 3 pages of background thoughts, and then it'll give you a prayer to pray or bullet points to pray through. And so when you're praying through it, like you might feel a bit weird praying somebody else's prayer that it's already written out, but she explains, look, if you mean it, well then it's your prayer. And so don't feel funny about that. And I love looking at it. These are the so if this is how you work, you can just flip to the bullet points and just pray through that stuff. But it's powerful insights because each chapter looks at different parts of the person's life. I'll give you a little rundown of the types of things. Pray for her emotions, her motherhood, her moods, her marriage, her submission, her relationships, her priorities, her beauty, her sexuality, her fears, her purpose, her trust, her protection, desires, work, deliverance, obedience, need, her future, and so forth. For the praying wife one, it's not the exact same list. His work, his finances, his sexuality, his affection, his temptations, his mind, his fears, his purpose, his choices, his health, and so on. So great tools that'll not only help you have more of God's blessing in your marriage, but teach you how to pray. This is Gottman's work. We'll hear a bit from John Gottman up on the screen soon. And next week we'll be getting into this book in earnest, but part 3 of today will be from this book, the 7 principles for making marriage work. Then the old love languages and his needs, her needs is where we're going to start. All right, they're all compatible theories, and so we're going to get into it today. And we'll start with the old favourite of the love languages. All right, so here's how the love languages work. And inside each one of us, we have a love tank. And the tank keeps leaking. And it needs to be filled up again and again. And the trick is, when we're first dating someone, we do all 5 of these things all the time because we're in love with them and it's exciting, and often we don't have as many responsibilities and we've got time and resources, and so we're saying nice things, we're doing each other favors, we're giving gifts, we're cuddling, we're spending time together any minute you can, you're having a lot of non-sexual but affectionate physical touch, and these things just fill our tank to overflowing and we just feel so in love with the person. Then life hits. You get a full-time job, a couple of kids, and you just don't have time to do all this. You're not a bad person, but just time is short. And so your tank starts to run empty. Now, each one of us naturally has a way that we like to show our love, but it doesn't necessarily it doesn't necessarily match up with the way that the other person wants to receive love. So for some of us blokes, we like to do acts of service. But we'll be out there mowing the lawn and she's longing for quality time. And we'll be pushing the mower thinking, she's going to be so grateful for this. And she's inside the house thinking, doesn't he love me? Who cares about that stupid lawn? All he cares about is the lawn. I think he loves the lawn more than me. He spends so much time with it. And then he's thinking, I'm going to get the biggest warm welcome when I come in the house. And then he comes in and she's all cranky and he's got no clue. Well, after all I've done for you, she didn't want that. What she wanted was quality time. And so, maybe he's longing for words of affirmation. He's imagining it when he comes in. She's going to say, you're the best husband ever. That lawn looks so good. You're a wonderful man. And instead of getting affirming words, he gets told off. Where have you been all night? What? And then no gratefulness, no thankfulness. And all of a sudden, his tank is getting lower as well. Now, the trick with the love language is the one that you want the most is worth 10 times more than all the others. The others are appreciated, but the one that you're longing for the most is super powerful. And if you get the opposite of it, it's super damaging. Let's say your love language is words of affirmation and someone says you're an idiot or uses rough words with you. Nobody wants to be called an idiot or have rough words. But if it's your love language, then you're going to replay that phrase in your head 10,000 times and it's going to tear you apart. And so if yours is physical touch and he never touches you anymore, you're going to be dying inside. And he might just be totally oblivious. And so it's so important that we figure out what each other wants. So for a bit of fun, let's go through it together. And I'd love for you to give me some examples of acts of service that men and women could do for each other. And we'll be giving out some of these chocolates for good ideas.
Make her a coffee.
Make her a coffee. There we go. Yes. Do the ironing. There we go. Do the dishes. Where did that come from? Excellent. All right, let's go into the next one. Gift giving. Do you have to give a diamond ring and an expensive gift? You should. I'll give you one of these for that. Whoops. She is. So, yes, a rose. Here we go. Oops. So the trick with gifts is it doesn't have to be expensive. It has to be what? Thoughtful. So if he makes her a daisy chain and gives it to her when they're dating, she's going to get that and put it in a special drawer because that's meaningful. And so sometimes the guy hears what she wants as gifts, so he doesn't buy her a single thing all year because he's saving up for a super expensive necklace. And it costs $2,000 and he gives it to her at Christmas time, but too bad it doesn't make it to Christmas time because she's already broken up with him and left. Because she was just longing for the little things, a little card, a bunch of flowers, a box of chocolates left on a pillow, little gifts, meaningful, thoughtful things. She says, my favorite drink is passion fruit soda. And then she finds a passion fruit soda in her fridge at work or something, and he's organized to put it there. She's blown away. And so it's the little thoughtful gifts that make the difference. All right. You help me out here. What are some good words of affirmation? I love you. You're gorgeous. What else? That was a great meal. Thank you. What else? What are the other good words of affirmation? You mean a lot to me. Catch. Come on up the back here. Give us the kind words. We need to hear them. Say again. You're doing a great job. That's it. These words make a difference. We talked about it in church last weekend. They're hard for us Aussies to get them out of our mouths, aren't they? But we need to learn to do it. All right. Quality time, what's that all about?
Just finding things to do together.
Finding things to do together, good. That's what's needed. Yes, what else? Listening. What wrecks quality time? TV. What else? Mobile phones. Here we go. Who hasn't had one yet? What else wrecks quality time? Life. Arguments ruin it. Yes. Other priorities. Excuses. Yeah, here we go. So with quality time, in a range of other marriage kind of resources, it comes up with the same suggestion. And here's the suggestion. Every day the couple needs to say at the end of the day, how was your day? And then they listen for 10 or 15 minutes. And then the other one needs to say, and how was your day? And you listen for 10 or 15 minutes. That is the backbone of a relationship. If you skip that one day, you'll be fine. It's not what happens on one day that makes or breaks a marriage, usually. It's what happens in the little things every single day, 365 days a year. And so you need to find a way of saying to one another, you need to carve out the time. Now, for me and Jess, we have 5 little girls. When I come home, they all want to hear Dad say to them, guess what? How was your day? And so I've got to be realistic. Do I want to be a real dad or just a person who produced children? And so I have to be in their lives and say, how was your day, honey? How was your day? And I have to, guess who has to be my favorite? Jess has to be my favorite. Yes. Among the kids, it's got to be even Stephen. But it's not wrong for the kids to realize that I love Mum the most. And when the kids, this is an interesting thing. Have you seen the diagram of a triangle where you've got mum, dad, and child? Which relationship do you think will lead to the child's greatest mental, emotional health? Some people think, well, it'll be child to mum, or some people think it'll be dad to child. But it's actually the kids mentally, emotionally healthiest and strongest when mum and dad have got the healthiest relationship. And then they're safe and secure. That's what they need. And so that's a little interesting thought. So, quality time. It's as simple as setting aside 10, 20 minutes at the end of every day for connecting. And it's worth it. It makes all the difference. We all need that, by the way. But some people, that's just going to be the warm-up. And then they're going to need half an hour or so later on in the evening for more chatting about life. And maybe they will have contacted you and had a chat over the phone for 10 minutes at lunchtime. And what they're not going to like is if you're doing this while they're telling you, pouring out their heart. I don't want to pour out my heart to someone who's not giving me the time of day. I've got too much self-respect for that. Look at me if I'm going to, be pouring out my heart. Don't be doing something else while I'm doing that. All right, physical touch. It's not talking about sex. What's it talking about? A hug. Yep. What are the other actions we can do? Hug. What else? That's right. It's like affection, isn't it? It's a pat on the shoulder. Here we go. I hope you like these aqua ones, whatever they are. I keep getting them too short for the... All right. What are the other gentle physical touches that we can do? Little kiss, yes, or a nice kiss. Just brushing past someone, touching them as you pass in the hallway. You could avoid them, but you just give them a nice touch as you go past in the hallway. This makes a marriage a wonderful marriage, but also kids need it as well, don't they? So our relationships with our kids, obviously, it's going to be a bit different in all these things because they're not your lover, but they need affection in all these different expressions. And the guy who has written this has got a whole book on love languages for children. And so we need to be able to figure out what our kids are longing for. So here's the next question. You don't need to say it out loud, but do you know what your spouse's love language is? Do you know it? Do they know what yours is? So if you were to ask me that question, I've been married. By the way, I'm about to have a week off, and it's our wedding anniversary, 18 years. And praise the Lord. And first half of the week, we'll be unpacking boxes, and then we're going away for a few days, and Mum and Dad are going to look after the kids. Anyway, if you were to ask me what's Jess's love language after 18 years and teaching this stuff, you know what? I don't know what it is. I can't figure it out. And she won't tell me what it is. She doesn't know what it is. She says, I want all of them. That's what she says. I want all of them. I think that's a bit hard going. And I think I'm still trying to figure it out. She knows what I want. It's very clear. I just told her all along, this is what matters to me. But it's a mystery. So sometimes these things don't just work out. You'll never figure it out. It's a work of a lifetime. Here's the real wisdom coming out now. Yes, I think that's you men deserve these for those pearls. Yes, you'll never figure it out. She says she likes them all. So it keeps me on my toes, I'll tell you that. But some of us, our love tank is running on 0, and we don't have any more love feelings in the tank. What do you do then? What do you do? Chocolate. It's not a bad idea. What are your thoughts? Talk about it. Here's the beautiful thing. The tank's going to get empty from time to time. No matter who you are, life's going to get in the way, and you will run out of love feelings. Here's the great news. You just start doing this stuff again, and guess what? The tank gets full, and the love feelings come back. And so real love is not just a feeling. It's a commitment that includes friendship, passion, and commitment to one another. And if you've got those 3 things, your love tank is going to go a bit like this. Hopefully not too deep and too high. Hopefully it'll always just be up the top there. But it'll have its ups and downs, and there will be times where, through no fault of anybody's, you just haven't been putting into each other's tank. And at that time, just know what's going on. Don't think, oh, our marriage is over. They talk about the 7-year itch and these types of things, different times during a person's marriage where they're likely to bail out. But just know, if you just start tending to this again, it'll fill up and away you go. And it's amazing. And you just basically have to start doing kind things to each other when you don't feel like doing kind things to each other. Does that make sense? You're not waiting for the feeling to start. You've just got to kick in. If I only helped my children when I felt like helping my children, they wouldn't be getting a whole ton of help, especially after I've gone to bed and things like that. But we all just do it because real love means you push through. There's a commitment there to my kids. And in a marriage, you want to have that commitment that when the love feelings aren't there, you address it and you start filling the tank. You know what else can happen? You can love more than one person at a time. This is bad news. It's how affairs happen. Just say you've got 2 good people and they love each other, and then they let their tanks run dry because they're busy. But at work, someone catches someone's eye and they just start doing nice things for that person. Guess what happens? They appreciate it. It fills their love tank. And their love tank starts going up and up and up. And guess what happens? Without the person being a bad person or wanting to, they start to have love feelings for that person. They almost can't help it because that person has filled their tank with kind words or a listening ear or leaving a little gift on their desk. And all of a sudden, their tanks become full. Now, what else can happen is that they could think, I've got to fix my marriage back at home, and they work on it at home, and they get their love feelings from their spouse as well. And now they have love feelings for 2 different people at the same time. Reality. It can just work like that. So Jess and I made a decision before we as we were coming together and getting married, that we wouldn't allow a person of the opposite gender to be on the inner circle of each other's lives, because we knew it was just too dangerous. We can have good friends, but not the inner circle. That's just for family members. And I could have a mate of the same gender who I might, open up my heart to or whatever, but I'm not going to do that with someone who could ever become a potential focus for my love feelings, because it'll just happen by accident. Not a bad person, but just somebody who's had their tank filled when they were desperate to have their tank filled. And so that's why we need to work on it, and I think put a little wall and hedge around our marriages with that in mind. All right, that's the love languages. Now, before this book came out, another bloke wrote a similar book, which is less well known today, but it actually has over 3 million copies sold. And it's called His Needs, Her Needs. And it says on the back, what will it take to make your marriage sizzle? That sounds good, doesn't it? And it says, building an affair-proof marriage. That also sounds good. Do you know what? This book here is virtually the same idea as the Love Languages book. But let's have a look at his. We're going to come back. I'm going to give you a challenge with each one of these three. You'll choose a challenge, if you like, an experiment for the month. And we'll do a love language one. We could do his needs, her needs. Let's look at this. All right. Watch this first. All right, thanks for that. So it's really the same idea as the love languages, isn't it? That one was from Gottman. His research is basically saying the same thing. He didn't specify what the types of nice things were, but it's the same idea. Now, there were actually a few other concepts that got thrown into that little clip. Can anybody tell me other gems that they got out of that? Yeah, the 5 to 1. All right, there we go. Sorry, I'll get better at this. All right, so the 5 to 1. What do you think? Is it true? Yeah. It's so easy to crush someone, and then they're left thinking of that and ignoring all the other lovely things that have happened. So one good thing to do is just to not crush them in the first place. Another thing is, if you have to have a negative interaction, well, then go out of the way to do lots of positive things as well. What were other gems in that little video? Yes, and you want to keep it high. Yeah, excellent. All right, here we go. There we go. Okay. Getting better. There's one more that I picked up on. It was when the person had the plane flying across with "I love you" written on it. What was that point about? Yes. So 10 little things is worth more than one big thing, something like that. All right, that's excellent. All right, so let's go on. I was telling you about his needs, her needs. Here it is. So this is a little different to the 5 languages. He basically says, pick your top 5 things you want out of this list. And so here's the list: affection, sexual fulfillment, conversation, recreational companionship, honesty and openness. So let me go through them. Affection, that's, if you're to compare it to the love languages, maybe it's like the non-sexual physical touch, but it's having a kind and caring, thoughtful spouse, feeling loved because they look after you. Sexual fulfillment, we will skip the part where I say, put up your hand and tell us what that is. We'll leave that for you to discuss at home. Conversation, this is a bit like the quality time one, isn't it? Recreational companionship. This is breaking quality time into 2 different categories. Often a guy wants a woman in his life that he can do fun things with in the great outdoors or whatever. But I'm familiar with a couple that I worked with, and she just wanted to get out of the house, and he just wanted to stay home and watch TV. Like, they both worked hard on the weekend. His idea of a good weekend was stay at home for the whole weekend. Her idea was, let's go out to a restaurant. Let's go out and do something. And so some people really value that. Honesty and openness. We all value honesty and openness. This is about willingness to be vulnerable and share your deeper thoughts. Having an attractive spouse. You might think, oh, that's a bit shallow. But if that's what makes you tick, well, then that's just who you are, and just embrace it and say, that matters to me. Financial support. Again, some people might say, oh, are they just a gold digger or whatever? Look, if that's what matters and that's what makes you tick, don't be ashamed of that. That's what you value. You need to be able to express that to your spouse. Domestic support. That's like help around the house, cooking, cleaning, making food, and family commitment. This is helping care for the children. And then admiration is like saying those affirming things. Now, I read through this with Jess, and I said to Jess, this would never get published these days. It sounds like the feminists would just have a meltdown if they read some of the ideas in this. But I think it's a real sad thing, because at the end of the day, who cares what the feminists say? If that's how you are, then that's how you are. You don't have to be married to all the feminists. You're just married to your spouse. And so whether you're a man or a woman, if what a guy wants is sexual fulfillment as his top priority, and he wants a friend that he can go play sport with, and then he wants his wife to be good looking, and he wants her to be helpful around the house and admire him, see what I say? The feminists would just go, give me a break, what do you think this is? Well, if that's what he wants, that's what he wants. And you will be happier when he's happy. And if she wants a husband who's affectionate and will listen and have a good conversation, be genuine and open and honest and have meaningful, deep conversations, and if she wants a spouse who's going to be able to provide for her financially, or, at least pull his weight in a serious way and is good with the children, and if that's just what makes her tick, don't care what anyone else says about it. If that's what you're like, then that's what you're like. And you need to be able to admit it and express it. And as I went through this, as a younger person, I think I was too influenced by what society told me I should be valuing as a husband. It's only we've been married for years that I've been able to say to Jess, these are the things that really actually matter to me. And I would love it if if things could grow in these areas. And Jess is able to say to me, I would love it if things would grow in these areas, and who cares what the rest of the world thinks. So what I want you to, I'm going to give you a sheet with all this on it, and what I'd love to invite you to do, if this is interesting to you, is sit down with your spouse, identify your top 5 that you want, each one of you, and put them in an order. And if your top 1 is something like an attractive spouse, and you feel shallow as anything, you're not. If that's what really makes you tick, then that's what makes you tick. He tells the story in this book of this couple that came to him, and the husband was upset because what he was longing for was sexual fulfillment, and it wasn't happening. And the guy tells the story in his book, and he says, this guy had the worst hygiene of anyone I'd ever met. And and he said, I'm going to prescribe something for you and your spouse. You've got to just do what I say. And so they both agreed to it. And his instructions was something like, go home and take a shower twice a day. And he would go weeks without having a shower. And so have a shower twice a day. Get your wife to go shopping with you. She's going to choose clothes, and you're going to wear whatever she wants you to wear. And it was 1 or 2 more very basic ideas like this. And then he said to her, and you're going to have sex with him every day of the week for a week. Well, they came back, they were holding hands in the waiting room. They were all happy, and what do you know? Some very basic things there weren't being taken care of, and when they were, they're a happy couple. And it kind of sounds ridiculous, but we're all a bit ridiculous, let's be honest. We've all got our little quirks. We brush up for going out in society, but your spouse knows what you really like. And these are the sorts of things that can go on. Now, that's an exaggerated one, but I encourage you to push past the fact that it might seem like when you read it, it's sort of 30 years from a culture 30 years ago. I think this is just humanity. People still want this stuff. And so, you might be a bit of a different part of the equation, and you might not fit into the typical trend. And he says of this list, every second one is typically a male one, and every second one on the list is typically a female one. But he said you can have it swapped around. Some men really would want the wife to be able to pull their weight financially, and that's just really a big deal for them. The other thing that's worth mentioning with this is sometimes we think that the other person's desire is just a whim and it's not worth bothering with. But it's not a whim. Some of these things matter to the other person so much that they're kind of almost dying inside from missing it. And you might think, well, it sounds such a shallow thing that why would me having an income mean so much to her? She should just love me just for who I am or whatever. But that's not how she ticks. If that's what really matters to her, or if those conversations or opening up your heart, if that's what she's really longing for, you've got to understand that's not just like a take it or leave it thing. If she's told you that's what I'm longing for, listen to her. And it goes the other way around. If you tell her, and you need to listen to him and realize, okay, this is not just something that, take it or leave it. It really matters. All right. I want to jump on now to the third section today. By the way, there'll be a challenge opportunity like this with each one. So you can do it with your partner, but if you choose this one from the His Needs, Her Needs, the idea is discuss your top 5 needs with your spouse and share the greatest current need. Make a plan to take a daily action step towards change for the greatest need for 30 days. It's the 30-day challenge. And try something new once a week for the other 4. Does that make sense? You pick the one that's you're really hungering for the most and ask the person to make a change. Now, you might just be able to do it with no extra help. You might find that it's more useful if you get the book on audio or physical and read it and get a better idea than just the 5-minute spiel I've given you. You might need to go to a marriage counsellor and have them help you through it, because you might say, like, let's say, not an unusual scenario, is someone wants better sexual fulfillment and one person wants to have a lot of sex and the other person hardly wants to have sex at all. And so you might just think, this is too hard for us. So it's time to go pay the money, do the time, and get a counsellor and have someone walk you through it, because it's your whole life. Now, let's just be honest. Counselling has had a bit of a stigma. Just shake it off. You just got to, you wouldn't, I don't know, maybe you would, but when you're sick, you go see a doctor. When your car's broken, you go to the mechanic. When your relationship needs some help, go see a counsellor. Like, that's just what they're there for. And we think, it's my life. I'm thinking about it all the time. What could they possibly suggest that I wouldn't have already thought of? Well, guess what? There's a lot that they can suggest that you wouldn't have thought of. They've studied it for years, and that's all they do every day, meet couples. And so also, you might have thought to yourself, we've seen a counsellor, but it didn't help. See a different counsellor. Jess and I have probably been through about 10 counsellors over our 18 years, and we made a decision that we're not going to wait till our marriage is like on death row before we go see a counsellor. If it drops below 50%, we're going to go see a counsellor. Why wait till it's an emergency? So just have it as one of the things you do. And so also, it's tricky for us to see a counsellor since we've got 5 kids, and when can we see them? Well, with the COVID, there's come up this great thing called Zoom. So the last 2 counsellors that we've seen, it's been on Zoom at 8 p.m. at night after we've put the kids to bed. And so one of them was at 6 a.m. in the morning from another country. We had a counsellor, we had an American woman, and we would meet with her at 6 a.m. till 7 a.m. before the kids woke up. We had about 6 sessions with her. I thought she was okay, but after a while I just said, Jess, I'm not getting anything out of this. We swapped, found another person who was actually in the same town as us, but because we could do Zoom at night and not have to get a babysitter, we just did it that way. And so do what you need to do to get the help. And if that's not a good one, get a different one. And you know, you might think, boy, this is expensive, $120 an hour or something like that. You know what? Whatever you pay on counselling is a drop in the bucket compared to what you'll pay if you have a divorce. Like, it's just nothing. So just pay the money. The Four Horsemen. Okay, we're changing gears. Everybody say, we're changing gears. All right. So far, if you're looking at a marriage, there's 2 things that will make a marriage great or weak. One of them is, are you doing nice things for each other? That can make it great. The other thing is, are you hurting each other? That can make it low. So the failure to do nice things can make it low, and doing mean things to each other can make it low. So to make it high, you have to avoid the mean things and do the nice things. So what are the ways we wreck marriages? And so John Gottman, who you saw the little video clip of his stuff before, you're going to hear more from him next week, from this little book, The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work. He's regarded now as probably the top marriage and family psychologist in the world. He did this thing called the Seattle Love Lab. He got 600 couples to stay in an apartment over a weekend. They were videoed, and they had heart sensors on them and all this kind of stuff to check their pulse and all this sort of thing, over from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m., like over a weekend. They had a huge team of like researchers just watching every move. So recording every word they said, looking for eye rolls, raising of temperature and all this kind of stuff. They measured it all. Up until this time, most of the best psychologists, they'd figured it out in just what works in their counselling room. And then you end up with books like this. But this is the first time any of them have taken such a scientific research approach to relationships. And he boiled it down to 7 things that marriages that really thrive have got. We're going to look at them next week. Before he starts on the 7 things that make marriages thrive, he tells you a few things that kill marriages. And he says that if you've got these things, he can talk to a couple. This got him on TV all over America. He said he can talk to a couple for 5 minutes and tell with 95% accuracy if they're going to have a divorce or not. He says he can figure it out in 5 minutes where they're going. And he says that he's looking for these 4 things. He calls them the Four Horsemen. That's a little rip-off of the Bible. The Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse. If you've got these things in your marriage, it's like the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse have come through. So what are they? Let's read it together. Criticism, defensiveness, contempt, and stonewalling. I'm going to show you a little video clip. All right, so let's have a look at these 4 things. This is what we do when we fight bad. Now, one of the things he discovered was that all relationships argue, but some argue in a positive way and some argue in a destructive way. And you can have even couples that are very noisy when they argue. My in-laws can be like this. I remember the neighbours hearing it when they were building our house for us in the backyard. But they've been married for 50-something years. They're a beautiful couple, but they'll just let it out. And so it's not that you're arguing, it's how you argue. And so he points out these 4 things, and they often have a flow. Someone will be critical. Then what comes next? Someone will be defensive. Then that makes things worse. And then so it gets to the real toxic one that he says is the absolute worst thing for a marriage. What was it? Contempt. And so that's where you're just like basically looking down and despising the other person. And that's the most toxic thing for a loving relationship. And then from when somebody's getting a load of that, how do they respond? Stonewalling. They just block them off. And so that's just the general flow of it. So give me some examples of, can you remember how they defined criticism? Because there's nothing wrong with pointing out problems or whatever. It's an attack on their character. That's right. Okay, so rather than saying, you forgot to take the bin out, you're an idiot. You forgot to take the bin out. Like, you must be, what is wrong with you? Can't you remember to take the bin out? That phrase, what is wrong with you, rolls easily off the tongue, but it's having a go at who they are rather than what they did that was the problem. You could say, I'm so upset that you've forgotten to take the bin out. That's different to saying, what is wrong with you? Can't you even remember to take the bin out? One is an attack on your very person. All right, so criticism refers to attacking or putting down the partner's personality or character. There's something wrong with him or her. Expressing your feelings, even strong, powerful feelings, is fine, but it's how you do it that matters. So there's a difference between criticism and complaints. A complaint addresses a specific action or non-action. Why didn't you take the bin out? The bin's overflowing. Example, you've discovered the toilet seat up. What is wrong with you? Are you that lazy you can't even put down a toilet seat after you use it? So the person's now lazy because they haven't done it. Maybe they just didn't think about it. The toilet seat's up again. Can you please just put it down when you use it? Doesn't need to be any more fancy than that. But one has been an attack on the person's character. They're lazy for doing it. And the other one's just a complaint. Can you just put it down, please? Antidotes to criticism. Find the request behind the criticism. So let's say you're being attacked. Be strong enough to not get triggered by it and look behind it and say, what's the real concern here? Address the behavior you don't like. Don't attack the person. Learn to make specific requests and complaint. When such and such happened, I felt this, but I really would prefer this. When you showed up late for work, I felt so disappointed. I'd made dinner. I would love it if you're going to be late. Just ring me and let me know, or whatever. So there's nothing wrong with having conflict. It's how you have the conflict. Soften your startup. And so what he discovered is, if you start with, "You idiot," you can not almost guarantee that's going to end out badly. You've got to start with a soft startup, saying one of these other options. "I'm disappointed that this happened. I'm so upset about this," is totally different to you fill in the blank with a criticism or an insult of who they are. And so if you start with a harsh startup, you can do what they call a repair attempt, where once the argument has begun, you try and make it a lot more lighthearted and pull back. But if you had a harsh startup, odds are against you for a repair attempt. But if you've said, "Man, I'm so upset, I can't believe that you've forgotten the bin to go out again. It's overflowing and the birds have been into it," or whatever, and then they can say, "Oh, I just forgot." And then you can move past that. Nobody got attacked there. Somebody got upset, but nobody was laying it into the other person, and you can still have a good rest of the night. All right, defensiveness. What does this look like? I'll chuck out some chocolates here. Give me some defining features of a defensive response. Not my fault. Yep. What else? What's another example of defensiveness? I couldn't help it. Yep. What was another one?
Well, if you had the blur, then I wouldn't have.
There we go. Oh, back to my old short throw. So if you hadn't done this, then blah, blah, blah. That's actually a very good example. What else is there? Defensiveness, when it comes down to it, it's about protecting yourself and warding off a perceived attack, making excuses, cross-complaining, saying yes, but it's all defensive behavior. So weren't you going to get the insurance on the car? And instead of just saying, "Sorry, I forgot, I've messed up," you start making excuses, just won't take responsibility. Now, maybe there were good reasons why you didn't get the insurance on the car, but at the end of the day, we're going to have a look at the antidote to defensiveness is validate what your partner's saying and accept some of the responsibility for it. You're probably right. A phrase like that, when someone's laying it into you, you're probably right. Or I can see where you're coming from with that. I don't know if it's all my fault, but this is what happened, but I can see that I could have done better or whatever. Admitting some responsibility is going to break that cycle. Otherwise, the person feels like that they're not getting heard, and then they're going to be... Often the pattern leads to this next worst one, contempt. And I think we've got a little video clip on this, so I'm going to see if John Gottman can tell us. What did you think of that? What gems did you pick up in there? He covered a few different things, didn't he? Say that again. There we go. Look for the good. 2 types of drivers. Idiots and maniacs. Look at that maniac. So what's the lesson from the 2 types of drivers? The critic is... If you're a critical person, it just flows out everywhere you go, doesn't it? And you're looking at everybody's problems everywhere you go. Yeah. What else did you see in there?
The stemming from self-criticism as well.
Yes. What did you think of that? Did you pick that up? The critic probably is having a go at themselves all the time as well. Thanks, mate. So can you see how a lot of this would just be habitual? And so to address it is going to take quite an effort. You're not going to all of a sudden just sort that out. All right, the final one is stonewalling. So what's stonewalling?
Don't speak to me.
Don't talk to me. Switching off. Say again. Cold shoulder. The silent treatment. Just giving up. Yep. All right, so stonewalling, sometimes people get really in a flap because they're longing for a response. You can imagine a woman just laying into her partner, longing for a response. The guy's flooded. That's the technical term that he uses. He's totally overwhelmed, doesn't know how to handle it. So he just thinks, I'm just going to say nothing. Well, she's thinking, he's saying, he can see me absolutely behaving like a turkey, and he's saying nothing? I better turn it up a bit louder then. And so she goes absolutely ballistic, and he's just thinking more and more, I'm going to die. It's just too much. And so he says nothing more and more, and she's just thinking, he doesn't understand a single thing. He doesn't even care. And so, and this plays out again and again. You can swap the genders. It can go both ways. You can get a guy who's very verbal, and the woman who doesn't know how to handle it, and she's just, it's too much. And so she says nothing. And so you get this pattern that goes round and round and round, because at first they might have said, I'm so upset that you didn't take the garbage out. That didn't get the right response. I was defensive about it. So now you're an idiot for not taking the garbage out. Still no response. What's wrong with you? Are you deaf as well? And so then the person's starting to shrink down, and you can see how this pattern can go round and round. He admitted there, he calls people whose relationships go good, he calls them the masters. And he said the masters will do the actions of the Four Horsemen, but they won't do contempt. And they'll mitigate the other three. They'll keep them under control. They'll try not to do too much of it. But they'll avoid contempt. That's where you're really just savaging the other person's character and who they are as a person. So stonewalling, sometimes you do need to get out of the tension of the moment. It's too hot. But you can get out and say, I'm coming back. There's a big difference between just shutting down and leaving, saying, this is too much for me now. Can we talk about it in half an hour? Okay, so that's the antidote for stonewalling. Check the feelings of being emotionally overwhelmed, emotional flooding. Take a time out. Tell your partner, I need a break. Saying I need a break tells the other person they have been listening. They do understand that I'm going nuts and I'm very upset. And a break means we'll come back to it. But right now, it's gotten too intense. And the break can be like a reset. And when you come back, you've got another chance to try the conversation again without being critical or, what's the bad word again? Without showing contempt for the other person. You can have another chance at it. You can say, sorry for how heated I got before. I shouldn't have used those words. Another classic thing that won't help an argument go well is to bring up 20 other arguments from the past. One topic at a time. And so that's really an attempt to flood the other person and control and overwhelm them. And do you want to have a happy marriage or not? Because it's not about winning the argument, it's about you both being happy at the end of the day. And so the tool of, I'm going to bring up the 5 other dumb things you did over the last 5 months, that's never going to help. And so make a decision, that's fighting dirty, we don't fight dirty. Dirty fighting is bringing up the insults or issues from the past, and it's attacking the person's character rather than dealing with the issue. You can be in tears, you can be yelling and shouting, but you don't have a go at who the other person is or try and overwhelm them. And if they say, I need a break, say, all right, let's have a break. And you can cool down and come back to it. All right. Well, I hope you found some useful stuff in there. So that's all part of the intro to those 4 horsemen. Next week, we're going to look at, well, not next week, in 3 weeks' time, we're going to look at what his 7 principles for filling the tank up is, putting positive deposits in. So some of them might be a bit similar to the love languages, but I was surprised when I found out what his research showed really makes a marriage last. I'd love to have a prayer with you to finish up. Let's pray. Dear God in heaven, thank you for giving us this wisdom from these different people. Lord, I pray for all of our marriages, and I pray for our parenting relationships. I pray for our friendships at work as well. All these relationships need love. They all need forgiveness. They all need patience and kindness. Father, I pray for some breakthroughs in our own homes. And I pray that we'd discover what our spouses and our children and our friends are longing for, and that we'd be able to meet the needs appropriately. Also pray, the Lord, that when things deteriorate and we're having an argument, that we'd be able to have a good, healthy argument and not fight dirty and hurt each other's character. And I pray for breakthroughs there too. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, so one last thing before you go. I'm going to give you one of these. It's got everything we learned with a challenge for each of the 3 sections we looked at today. The invitation is for you to take it home with your spouse and do a 30-day challenge where you're going to it's got an activity, basically. So if you want to pass these around and then take it home, thanks, Leanne. And you can do the 30-day challenge, and we'll come back in a month, and hopefully some good loving has happened in the last 3 weeks between now and then. Thanks, everyone.